Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video from Fun with Flags and History. I'm your host Frank, and as a part of Costa Rica's bicentennial celebration, today we are going to be talking about a very important part of Costa Rican history, as not only was it the bloodiest part of Costa Rica's history in the 20th century, but it also led to Costa Rica's dissolution and abolition of its military. I am of course talking about the Costa Rican Civil War, and what led up to it. Let's not waste any more time and hop right into this subject, shall we? In the 1940s, the antebellum period of Costa Rica prior to the Civil War was dominated politically by Rafael Angel Calderón, who previously served as a medical doctor and a lawyer prior to his interest in politics. He then served as president of Costa Rica between the years of 1940 to 1944. As per the Costa Rican Constitution, it was forbidden, and still is forbidden, to immediately run for re-election, and as a result of that, Calderón's political party, the National Republican Party, had decided to field law professor Teodoro Picado as their candidate for the 1944 Costa Rican elections. Unlike Calderón, however, Picado was seen as a bit of a weaker figure that acted more or less as a puppet to Calderón. Despite this, in 1944, Picado had won the elections against Democratic Party of Costa Rica candidate León Castro Cortés, and served as Costa Rica's 30th president and head of state. Under Picado's rule, the government heavily relied on the Costa Rican armed forces to maintain the peace within Costa Rica's borders. What was often the case was that pro-Calderón elements within the military would get involved in street fights, which only further ruined the image of the military as nothing more than brutes and thugs in the eyes of the Costa Rican people. Meanwhile, the Costa Rican Communist movement, led by Manuel Mora, the leader of the People's Vanguard Party and Costa Rica's only communist party, was allied to Picado's administration and further contributed to the unrest through the PVP's militia that attacked anyone who opposed Picado's government. As violence began to increase, protesters began to prefer carrying firearms over being unarmed, and as a result, the Costa Rican police threatened to shoot at them rather than assaulting the protesters as normal. Speaking of the People's Vanguard Party, let's explain their history briefly, as well as the leader of the said party, Manuel Mora, as not only are they an interesting group with a unique history in Costa Rica, but they play an integral role in today's video, as well as the next video. Manuel Mora was a communist Costa Rican politician and lawyer born on August 27, 1909 in the capital of San Jose. As a child born of a family of 12 children, he saw two of his sisters die from the lack of resources needed to survive. He studied at the Juan Rodin School and the Liceo de Costa Rica for elementary school and high school respectively, and he eventually got his baccalaureate in 1927. When the Spanish Civil War kicked off in 1936, Mora was fervently hostile to the fascist government fighting for power at the time and showed great support for the Second Spanish Republic, which mainly consisted of leftist elements such as communists, anarchists, and socialists alike. Something that also worried Mora, linking partially to his childhood, was his concern over the standards of living in his home country of Costa Rica. After supporting and being a member of many progressive organizations in Costa Rica, Mora, along with Carmen Lira, Carlos Luis Fallas, and several other Marxist intellectuals, formed the Workers' and Farmers' Party in 1931. The party soon renamed itself to the Communist Party of Costa Rica, before eventually landing on the name of the People's Vanguard Party, as it had begun to support the reforms of the Catholic Church, and likely an attempt to broaden its appeal to the Costa Rican proletariat at the time. In 1947, opposition leaders, disgusted with the regime that the Calderonists and Picado had led, began a strike that started on July 27, 1947. This strike was known as El Huelga de Brazos Caídos, or the Fallen Arms Strike. The fall in arms strike happened due to the abuses committed by the Picado administration, as well as concerns of Calderon, the previous president, the guy Picado was really listening to, was going to take power again through force, as the government was full of Calderonists, and Calderon was also the National Republican Party's presidential candidate again for the 1948 elections. This strike was meant to protest the current Calderonist regime and was done through ways of weakening the Costa Rican economy, mainly through closing up stores, work stoppages, and even the closing of educational institutions such as the University of Costa Rica. The phrase, "don't buy from him, don't sell to him," was used as a form of revolutionary slogan that was in reference to both Picado and the Calderonist forces within the military. As a way to pressure those that were participating in the strike, Calderonist factions within the military and communist demonstrators rubbed out any business that participated in the strikes, as well as Picado's administration applying pressure by intimidating merchants and professional business owners with dismissals and forced conscription into the military if they decided to support the strike. Another form of suppression of the strike was through the arrest of opposition leaders, such as those that were in the Social Democratic Party of Cartago, a regional branch of the Social Democratic Party of Costa Rica. This included opposition leaders Rodrigo Facio and Daniel Alduber, who was eventually released. Finally, after some negotiations between the Picado government and the opposition, the strike was finished on August 3, 1947, with the capital of San Jose looking like it had been under siege prior, due to the army's oppression, of course. As a form of concession between the Picado administration and the opposition, the Picado government gave them the Electoral Tribunal, which on paper would have been a committee overseen by the public, but more specifically the opposition, to ensure that the election was a fair one. But we'll get back to that in a moment. Flash forward to 1948, and it's the 1948 Costa Rican elections. There were two candidates running, with former President Rafael Calderon leading the National Republican Party and the bloc consisting of those within the Catholic Church, and the Communist People's Vanguard Party, as well as Otillo Olate, who was the opposition candidate that was running against Calderon and those that supported him. On February 9th, 1948, the ballots were cast, and with 55.3% of the national vote, the winner of the 1948 elections was Olate. However, Calderon of the National Republican Party was not happy with the results of the election. He did not see the results of the election to be legitimate, as he saw them as fraudulent and wanted them annulled, so he could be declared the real winner of the Costa Rican elections. For my American audience out there, this is probably really familiar to you all. China! Anyways, with both political parties arguing over the results of the election in 1948, the Electoral Tribunal that was formed earlier came to session to rule over the results of the election and to determine its legitimacy. By a split vote of 2-1, the Electoral Tribunal decided to declare Olate the winner of the 1948 elections. With Calderon furious over the results, claiming that they were fraudulent, he had called and petitioned Congress with the support of his coalition and the People's Vanguard Party to annul the votes of the election and to call for a new election. I could insert another 2020 US election joke here, but I think my comments are going to be... too late. Unlike the 2020 US election fiasco, however, Calderon and his Congress was somewhat successful in annulling the results for the election, thus making Calderon the president of Costa Rica whether the people really wanted him or not. This caused the country to erupt into chaos as both political sides accused each other of electoral fraud. What was the match to this metaphorical, gasoline-fired dumpster fire of a mess that is the 1948 elections, however, was the death of Dr. Carlos Luis Valverde. That day, the elections were annulled by Congress. Calderonist forces arrived at the house of Dr. Carlos Luis Valverde, a doctor and politician who had visited with Olate and Jose Figueres prior. At the entrance of his home, Valverde was shot by said government forces. He later succumbed to his wounds and died 2 days later on March 3rd, 1948. Before we get any further, it's important to establish who is Jose Figueres. Jose Figueres was, prior to the 1948 elections between Olate and Calderon, a Costa Rican businessman who was an opposition spokesman and leader that had been exiled in Mexico prior due to the continued persecution faced by the Calderon administration, as well as a radio broadcast that he had made in 1942 criticizing the Calderon administration. Figueres returned to Costa Rica in 1944 after the election of Picado, with Calderon temporarily stepping out of office. Unlike Olate, Figueres had been long planning a war with the Calderon government, as he, along with former President Leon Cortes, had felt that as long as Calderon was in power, Calderon would refuse to let a fair election take place in Costa Rica. Figueres began training the Caribbean Legion, a revolutionary organization consisting of multiple Caribbean and Latin American leaders, and revolutionaries attempting to topple Central American dictatorships in favor of democratic ones. One of the main goals of the organization was getting rid of the Trujillo regime in the Dominican Republic, as well as the Calderonist government in Costa Rica under Teodoro Picado. Fidel Castro was, interestingly, a prominent member of this organization.
What?
Figueres had an irregular force of around 700 people that were willing to fight against the Calderonist government at the time. Hoping to use Costa Rica as a central base of operations in the region, the Legion planned to go forward with attacking other authoritarian governments in Central and Middle America. Officials in Washington, D.C. followed the group with concern, as Figueres had intended to carry out several terrorist attacks in Costa Rica between the years of 1945 and 1946 were supposed to conclude in climax with a general strike, but these plans did not come to fruition. With the blood of Valverde spilt by Calderonist forces, Figueres felt this was the appropriate time to go up against Calderonist government, thus starting the Costa Rican Civil War. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to smash that like button. If you want to show some more support, of course, give your thoughts down below. Comment your thoughts down below. I always read your comments. You can, of course, like us on Facebook and click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when these videos come out. Anyways, guys, that is Frank Perry from Fun with Flex and History signing off. Have a good one, and of course, enjoy Costa Rican Independence Day and its bicentennial if you're a Costa Rican. Pura vida!